Welcome to the IIoT Connectivity Theatre, and I'm going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking about Industry 4, is it a myth? So first of all, I introduce myself. My name is Richard Jeffers. I head up the RS Industria proposition within RS Components. I live in the northeast of England, the greatest place on earth. I'm a mechanical engineer, so I've spent the last 4 years learning all about technology, which has been a real learning journey for me. My background's in operations and maintenance management, so I've built factories, maintained factories and run factories across a wide range of different sectors. And so up until 4 years ago, I would have described myself as someone who had a really good understanding of operations and maintenance. But the last 4 years has been all about learning about Industry 4, industrial IT, and how to apply emerging technologies into the world of manufacturing. So first of all, what is Industry 4? What is, first of all, Industry 1, steam power. Industry 2 was about electrification. Industry 3 was the use of computers in running factories. And Industry 4 is about bringing all those technologies together, bringing the operational technology that runs factories and the IT technology that runs information together, and getting the value out of bringing those two very different worlds of OT and IT together. So, some myths about Industry 4 and industrial IT. So the first myth is that it's all mature and all ready to go now. And we're all used to seeing, and in fact I'm sure there's loads of pictures like this around the expo today of digital factories and data visualization and augmented reality and lots of wireframe hands. And that's what's put out there, and that's very much the perception that is generated. But actually, the reality is very different. There's an awful lot of Industry 1, 2 and 3 still out there, and will be for a very long time. So, steam boilers, I used to look after steam boilers that were 50 years old, and as long as you maintained them, as long as you cared for them, they still did a good job for you. I had a lot of mechanical fillers with just simple electrical and mechanical control, nothing clever, but they were still able to fill bottles of beer within the constraints and the requirements that we had. And actually, traditional Industry 3 factories bringing together the sensor layer, the data layer and the information layer with on-premise technology can deliver huge amount of value without having to worry about the challenges of Industry 4. So actually, there is a lot of Industry 1, 2, 3 technology out there, and it will be there for a very long time to come before the world moves entirely to an Industry 4 world. And actually, assets are getting older. People are managing their assets for longer. This is a bit of data from the US, but similar trends exist in the UK. The average age of an asset is 11 years old, and certainly in my old life of running manufacturing sites, we would still talk about assets that were 15 years old as the new asset. And it was only once it was fully depreciated that we really started to get value out of it, because at that point in time, the asset was for free. And that's what I mean. These are not going to suddenly be replaced with new connectivity. An industry, the technology that goes into Industry 4 and industrial IT is still reaching maturity. If people haven't seen this before, this is the Gartner hype cycle for new technology, which splits all new technology into 5 phases. First of all, the innovation trigger, it's new and exciting. Then the peak of inflated expectations, where all the hype is said, but actually the reality is quite different. Then people move into the trough of disillusionment, where it turns out that actually it doesn't deliver what people expect it to deliver, before finally moving into the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity, when the technology really starts to bring value. And 2 or 3 years ago, the industrial IoT would have still been at that peak of inflated expectations, and now it's starting to move through this, but still 5 years from maturity before it really becomes ubiquitous and easy to roll out. So that was the first myth. The next myth, it's all plug and play. And I get this a lot within my own business about why is it so difficult to create industrial IoT, because I can connect up my smart home really easily. And loads of people in my business will show me their Raspberry Pi or their Arduino that they've got running their home automation network. Because actually consumer IoT is pretty easy to connect. And there's a reason for that, because actually consumer IoT is predominantly a single-use platform. Your smart doorbell connects to your smart app on your phone. Very simple. The applications are all on the cloud, and it's all designed to be on the cloud. There's no integration into enterprise platform. There's no legacy operational technology to worry about. You're not trying to turn your traditional doorbell into a smart doorbell. You're just buying a new smart doorbell. And whilst there's loads of devices out there, so it's device heavy, each of those devices is sending pretty simple, pretty homogeneous data streams. No real complexity in the data. But industrial IoT is a very, very different world. They are integrated platforms, trying to get data from lots and lots of non-homogeneous data sets. You've got challenges of having data both on-premise, on servers on your site, and in the cloud, so managing data in two different real estates. Loads of legacy integration. People want to move their data from their SAP to their CMS platform, to the machines themselves, so lots of integration challenges. Not just in the IT world, but also the integration between operational technology and information technology. And whilst there's a relatively small number of devices, the amount of data is huge, and the diversity of that data is huge as well. And actually, traditionally in Industry 3, we didn't make this easy for ourselves because there was no standard operational technology communication protocol. There are hundreds of different protocols out there for communicating in the operational technology world. I took this data from Wikipedia, so it must be absolutely 100% accurate. But there are lots of different protocols. And to try and get those different machines to talk together means you've got to handle that protocol translation. Loads and loads of myths around wireless. Wireless communication makes life easy. And again, in a domestic world, it is pretty easy to connect wireless devices. But in a very electrically noisy world of a manufacturing site, you really need to understand the limitations of different wireless communications before you go, this is the right one for me. And it's a constant trade-off between power requirements, range, and packet size that means you've really got to understand the constraints of that. And wires are pretty good, because wires will move a lot of data and a lot of electricity at the same time. So myth 3, it's all about rushing out and buying new data, putting new sensors out there, and investing in new data sources in your factory. But again, the reality is quite different. Factories are full of data, and that data exists in many different places. So first of all, there is new data. You can go out and buy new data sources. That's a picture of a vibration of an accelerometer, but a fixed vibration point is going to cost between £100 and £1,000 a data point. And that can very rapidly make it cost prohibitive to roll out that technology. But actually, there's probably a load of stranded data already inside your factory, trapped away in your machines that the OEMs designed, that if you can tap into that data and translate away, then you can get that data and use that for different purposes. And then you're talking of tens to hundreds of pounds per data point. But the best data of all is the data that's untrapped in your environment. And inverter drives powering motors are probably the best example of this. An inverter drive has hundreds of pieces of data inside it and enormous amounts of diagnostics that will tell you what's going on with that data, with that drive. And if you just plug your Cat5 cable into the side of it, you can start to access that data and repurpose it for lots of different reasons. And then you're talking pounds per data point. So don't rush out and look for new data, go and repurpose the data that already exists in your site. Myth 4, you just need to throw artificial intelligence in this problem and it's going to solve all your problems. Here's a picture of a motor-driven pump. I'm sure lots of people have got these in their factories. And the first thing you do with that is start to describe problems that are happening with it. You can put a vibration probe on that motor and fairly easily say this motor is vibrating abnormally. It's vibrating differently from it normally does. We've been able to do that for years, for tens of years. The next thing we can do is start to diagnose problems, and we can mash that vibration data in with maybe some process data. and look at the pressure drop across that pump and say, actually, the reason it's vibrating more is because it's cavitating. And again, this is not new technology, this is Industry 3 stuff. We've been able to do that for a while, as long as we can bring those two different data sets together. What becomes very difficult is the predictive element, about saying what's going to happen in the future using historical data sets. And most difficult of all is to start to prescribe the action that's going to take. And to do that, to do those things, describe, diagnose, predict and prescribe, you do need relevant, cost-effective leading indicators of failure, but you also need a huge amount of context. And quite often, the only people who can bring that context are the reliability engineers, the maintenance engineers, and the operators who understand the real world. Data science on its own won't give you the context you need to really bring that predictive maintenance to life. And here's a bit of an example of a vibration trace where, actually we know that this peak in vibration is just a start-up anomaly, and there's no point responding to that, but you need to understand the context to do that. Myth 5, IoT is a significant and unique security threat that is different from what exists from a security perspective in your site already. There's lots of different threat vectors that exist in your factory, of which IoT simply is one of those threat factors. And actually I was talking to a guy who runs a very large global OT infrastructure last night, and he was saying actually the problem isn't the new IoT devices he's putting on his network. The problem is all those other illicit connections to the internet that the controls engineers have been putting in over time that he knows nothing about. So he's like, I would love to have a controlled OT connectivity because then I understand it, not the myriad of different connections that exist already. So, security cannot be an afterthought. It's got to be built into your in Industry 4, Industrial IoT implementations from the start. Have a solution, don't try and tackle it piecemeal. Myth 6, you can do all this in-house. And I was talking to some former colleagues of mine who were saying the only people who understand how a brewery works is us lot inside brewery. So we're going to build all this artificial intelligence ourselves. But the reality is no one organisation has the capability to tackle this. And these are some of the blockers to the rollout of new technology. And you can see that the first two is about complexity, technical challenges, and staff and skills resources. Nobody can solve this themselves. They need to be working with partners. And the problem is people try and solve it themselves and realise it's too hard, and then go back to the domestic IoT and start looking at just simple single use cases. I'll have a non-integrated vibration solution that goes straight to the cloud, but then they lose all the benefits of integrating those different data sources because they're just applying a simple smart doorbell solution rather than integrating different data sources. So to bring together the data collection, the operational reporting, the data science and the data insights, you need those solution partners, those strategic partners who can bring those skills and insight that you don't have. But it's not all bad news. There's an awful lot of good news in here as well. And there are some incredible benefits that are being demonstrated today about rolling this technology out. These are some statistics from McKinsey, a few years old now, pre-pandemic, and they every few years run a global lighthouse survey, which takes the real leaders in digitization and sees the sort of benefits that they've had. And these are all arranged because there's different lighthouses, different starting points, different endpoints. But factory output increased from 25 to 200% improvement. If I'd had 25% improvement in my previous life, I'd have been a hero, let alone a 200% improvement in output. OEE improvements from 12% to 50% by applying digital technologies. The benefits are there, and the lighthouses, the people at the forefront of this, are seeing these benefits. And actually, people are also seeing good return on investment. This is a piece of research from Gartner, and 50% of projects delivering an ROI faster than was initially anticipated. And even the 30% that were slower weren't that much slower. It was only 20%, 25% slower ROI than originally intended. So people are seeing the benefit and are seeing fast and good ROI. And people are engaged. When you bring people on the journey with you and you engage in your people and make them believe in the change, then they'll help solve a lot of these problems and they'll find the solutions and find the problems that are worth solving. So, any questions initially for my whistle-stop tour through the myths of industrial IoT? Well, if you have any questions after the event, you'll see quite a few of us in red tops around today. Please come and have a free coffee next door at our coffee bar, and it'll be great to continue the conversation as the day progresses.